And on this episode of The Gatekeeper Keith, we have a very special guest. And I'm excited about this because he's been a longtime friend of yours. And for people who like the Gatekeeper series, if you like artists, say, the Charlie Daniels Band, Cheap Trick, and do I even dare say Taylor Swift, this gentleman's worked with them all. And he's got some incredible stories. Keith, why don't you tell us about him?
Well, I've known this fellow for 42 years. We first met at Legend Valley on July the 1st, 1979, when we opened for the Outlaws. And my good friend's name is Chuck Lips. And right now he's working for a company called RMA, which is a promotion company that does concerts. And he's been doing that since 1999. But Chuck, tell us about your impressions of me when you and I first met.
Well, to be honest with you, Jughead, I got to call you Jughead, so everybody knew you as Jughead.
That's good. That's
I
good.
always remember, so I remember Legend Valley like it was yesterday. I remember Freddie Salem had asked me to come down for the show because it was only about a couple hours from Akron, Ohio, where Freddie's hometown and mine was at the time. So I did. I remember just after the show and everything, and Freddie taking me backstage and introducing me to Steve Holland, and then you came into the room. And I think that was the first meeting that we had. But I'll never forget one time we were in the dressing room. Can't remember where it was at, but there was a bunch of people in the dressing room, the band, and Keith, and all of a sudden Keith walks in, he jumps up on this table, and he just he looks at everybody in the room. He says, "All right, now everybody, you listen up." He says, "Every once in a while, somebody's got to be the a-hole." And he said, "Today, that's me." He said, "Now get your butts out of this dressing room. We got a show to do." And I'll never forget that. And I learned from that day that that's how you take control backstage. You just jump up on the table and start talking.
Well, back then, somebody had to, like you said, be the and it just, I mean, you got all these people backstage and in the dressing room, and, for 10 minutes before we go on, the band doesn't want to be bothered, and, before that, they're shaking hands. Hey,
right.
Nice to see people. Let me, sign, pictures of us or, CDs or, records. They didn't have CDs back then, but records. Okay. But, it was just part of the show, it was part of my job, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And, it just, I think you got a kick out of it yourself, so it was just the way it was, it was my way or the highway.
I'm kind of curious, Chuck. Tell me a little bit about your association with the Outlaws. I mean, as you had said, you and Freddie were very, very close and had a good friendship. What can you tell us about the Outlaws and Freddie Salem?
I met Freddie Salem in 1975. He was living in Akron, Ohio, and I called his house one day. And his mom answered and said, "Is Freddie there? What's he doing now?" She said, "Oh, he's now in a band called the Outlaws." And I said, "What?" So I was just amazed. I remember the first time I went to see the Outlaws live was in Painesville, Ohio, to the Agora, and boy, I was just blown away with that Southern rock and the music they were playing. And Freddie, would always have me backstage and everything. I got to watch, learn the business, got to be good friends with Huey Thomason. Hardly a day goes by that I don't think about Huey, but he's just a great guy. Even versions of the Outlaws after Freddie had left and the band had reorganized, I still was in contact with Huey up until the day he died.
And Chuck, it just so happens that Jimmy Farrar was in St. Augustine at the time because we were working on the Gator Country project, and we made the decision to drive down to Brooksville for the funeral of Huey. It was just a sad time. And with that being said, Ron, all I can say is stand by for the part 2 of our conversation with Chuck Lips from Studio 1J in beautiful St. Augustine, Florida. Stand by for the next episode of The Gatekeeper.
All right. Yeah, yeah.